Source One Management Services PartnerCast, bringing you the latest and greatest from our strategic partners in the procurement industry. Today's guest is David Clevenger, Senior Vice President of Corporate United, the nation's largest group purchasing organization. David, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Corporate United?
Sure. Well, Corporate United is, as you mentioned, a group purchasing and supplier management organization. We have over 250 members across the United States, most of whom are Fortune 1000 companies. We've been in business since 1997. As far as myself, again, as you said, I'm the Senior Vice President responsible for corporate strategy, organizational development. I've been with Corporate United for about 10 years in a variety of roles, and prior to that, ran the indirect sourcing practice for Free Markets, which is now part of Ariba.
Oh, okay, great. So how did the partnership between Source One and Corporate United come about?
It certainly came about a long time ago, and so if I don't recall every detail, I apologize for that. I know that we were looking certainly to be able to expand our sourcing and market intelligence and market reconnaissance resources internally, and to do that by leveraging some outside firm, and went through a selection process to identify a specialist firm who could do that. I don't recall exactly how we came upon Source One at that time, but had the opportunity to meet with Joe Payne and get a sense for the skills and the research capabilities and sourcing capabilities that Source One brought to the table. And I do recall specifically a fondue dinner with Steve Belli, over which we had a lot of laughs and I think signed a contract.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Oh, I wish I was there. I love fondue. So I'm going to change gears a little bit. You once wrote about the myths of GPOs, and one myth that you specifically highlighted was about that GPOs can't accommodate unique requirements. So can you share a little bit more about why you think that is a common myth?
Sure. Anytime you have an aggregated arrangement, you're naturally inclined to assume that there are restrictions based on that. So just as you can get a great deal on each granola bar at Costco if you buy a box of 500. A Groupon deal must be used by a certain date, and most of all, it's the same for everyone. So we have this predisposition, this inclination to believe that anytime I'm getting a deal that it's restricted. And this was also true of many historic group buying efforts in the B2B space. But today's group purchasing organizations, today's approach is a lot more sophisticated, and you have to be when you're dealing, again, with the size companies, with the unique requirements that our member organizations have. We've reached a point where flexible contracting and a unique approach to that space really ensures that the individual needs of every organization are met, while at the same time we're still able to capitalize on the value that the leverage brings to the marketplace.
Great, great. Now, you also mentioned a myth that organizations feel sometimes that they can't realize or they can realize greater savings on their own. However, they don't take into account some of the soft dollar benefits of working with a GPO. So can you tell us a little bit more about what those might be?
Sure. Well, I think first, though, to clarify, it's important to note that it's not a myth that organizations can realize greater savings on their own. It happens. Leverage isn't everything. And if an organization goes through a really outstanding strategic sourcing process and spends the time and puts in the effort that's required, they can achieve great things independent of a GPO and without that additional leverage. And there are always unique market dynamics and brand dynamics and geographical dynamics that play into a supplier's decision for how to price themselves. So I certainly wouldn't just say out of hand that organizations can't realize greater savings on their own. The value of using a GPO, however, can be a major resource multiplier in addition to being an incremental saver. So even if an organization could achieve the same pricing schedule for relocation services as Corporate United can get them through Weichert, for example. They're spending that time. They're dedicating those resources. Whereas if they utilize the Corporate United agreement, achieve the same results, used their own internal resources to tackle an additional category, now we're sourcing twice as much and we're saving twice as much. And that's something that's very easy to quantify from a soft dollar benefit standpoint because it really translates very cleanly into a hard dollar advantage that that organization has by utilizing the third party.
Very interesting. Thank you. Okay, the next question. What is one of the biggest challenges that you think procurement groups are going to face in 2015?
I think probably the single largest challenge that most procurement groups are facing is that strategic sourcing as an approach is waning in effectiveness. A lot of organizations, particularly on the indirect side, you're in a position now where a lot of the categories for which procurement is responsible are maturing. They've been strategically sourced 4, 5, 7, 10 times over the last 20 years. As a result of that, those pricing schedules, those dynamics in those markets have been largely rationalized. For example, temporary staffing, it was nothing for a temporary staffing firm 15, 20 years ago to get 150% or more markup on a clerical or light industrial temp staffing position. Today, those markups are in the mid to high 20s, and they're not going to go any lower than that, or those organizations are going to go out of business. As a result, procurement's challenge is, how do we continue to demonstrate value and demonstrate improvements in areas where strategic sourcing no longer has the impact that it once did in these categories, and we can't simply take something to bid or write an RFP and go out and book 15% savings and deliver that to the CFO.
That's very true. So going along with that, what is one of the biggest trends you think procurement groups will see and be affected by in 2015?
Well, I think that, and we're already starting to see this with some of the more advanced organizations, that sourcing is being replaced by a more aggressive and more sophisticated approach to supplier management. I wouldn't say it's a trend that we see today outside of the leaders, but it's definitely something that's beginning to happen. And it's about, again, instead of now going to that provider and saying, we're going to do a bid, we need another 5%, when that other 5% really isn't there, that you're instead saying we need to take more of a partnership approach with these suppliers and seek to identify ways to do business better, to collaborate more, to develop a more sophisticated approach to the market that's focused on quantifying continuous improvement and implementing continuous improvement. Because, again, the bid mentality is not what's going to carry the day, but there are still largely improvements that can be made. And I think on the indirect side, where we've historically seen relationships between buyers and sellers being more adversarial, I think the future is one in which those relationships are going to be a lot more collaborative and working together more closely to achieve the goals that both organizations have set forth. So more transparency between those groups, more partnerships between those groups, and more indicative to, I think, what we've historically seen more on the direct side. One of the examples we use a lot when we're explaining this to people is, when Ford is ready to launch a new vehicle, it's not just some Ford engineers that are sitting in a room by themselves. It's Ford people, but they're there with their top suppliers. They're there with their steel suppliers and their plastic suppliers and their electronic suppliers. They're working together right from concept phase with their supply partners to develop the most effective solution and the most effective end product that they can bring to market. I think some of those same principles are going to be adopted and translated into the indirect side as these organizations become more effective and are finding different ways to really impact their bottom line and make their organization stronger.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, that about does it for us today. Thank you again for joining SourceOne's PartnerCast. To learn more about Corporate United, please visit their website at www.corporateunited.com. And as always, feel free to visit us at www.sourceoneinc.com for more procurement consulting news, tips, and services. Thanks for listening.